We have a next presentation. I don't think we have like a time for pause, so we'll just go straight into it. Our next speaker is Inna Popova, who has a background in linguistics, and she's also the teacher of languages. And she is completed the doctoral program at the Institute for Linguistic Studies. And she teaches and she taught Latin, English, German, and Russian. And now she's teaching linguistics at Sallay Dialogue, which is the school under the Sallay umbrella. And she's going to talk about teaching language through the integral linguistic perspective, because this is something that she does. And we will discuss the ways that level 1 or different languages could be taught through the layered structure of general linguistics. So, Inna, the floor is yours.
Can you see my presentation? Have I shared it?
Yeah, sorry, we cannot hear you very well. If you can either speak up and maybe change the...
Okay, can you hear me now?
Slightly better, but
okay.
Maybe even...
What about now?
Yeah,
no.
but yeah, okay. If it's gonna break up, maybe you can just change the, maybe if you could remove the headphones, and that would maybe work better. But yeah,
okay,
let's...
I will ask you then to stop me when you don't hear me very well, okay? And I will change my headset. All right, but let's start. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this conference. I will talk about changing the program of first language. In my case, it's Russian, for the middle school, using the general linguistics approach and the systematic approach that general linguistics offers. So in my situation, again, it is Russian, but it can also be applicable to, say, Ukrainian or any other first language, I think. The problem that we have faced when we started building or constructing our curriculum, our program, was that in middle school, in normal, so to say, Russian middle school, the governmental program is built in a very specific way. And the problem there is that it is focused mostly on spelling and punctuation training. So, of course, there are topics, like theoretical topics, like what a noun is or what an adverb is and so on, or what the structure of a sentence should be. But it is all about how to spell things, how to spell words, and how to punctuate those sentences. And it is not, it doesn't pay too much attention to the system of the language. And what I have seen in my days as a teacher, as a Russian teacher, when I interview new students for our school, for example, they usually say that, okay, I remember what a noun is, and they give a certain very specific, they give a very specific explanation for what a noun is, and they know maybe some of the terms, but they don't understand that it is a system. And when I ask them in the beginning of the year, what is language, they usually say, this is what we use. It is something that we use to speak. Maybe they say to communicate, but they never say it's a system, because probably they were never taught that it is. So the situation with the normal governmental school program is that it is focused on punctuation training and spelling training, and the rules thus are not perceived as parts of a system, as interconnected elements of the language, of the system of the language. They are perceived usually as disconnected rules, like today we're going to learn how to spell this and how to punctuate that. And students usually do not understand the connection between several lessons. Of course, there is some time dedicated in governmental schools to phonetics and morphology and syntax as linguistical levels, so to say, but it is very disproportionate. And I will show you on the next slide how disproportional it is. And you will see also that it takes a long time, usually many hours, to learn to finish one topic. And I really have difficulty understanding how a person after all these hours can remember where they started. So the system kind of falls apart, the system of the language in their heads. And it is difficult for the students to understand that it's systematic knowledge. And it is difficult for teachers to kind of walk the students through the system. Of course, a big part of the program is dedicated to preparing students for the exams, especially writing and reading parts. In the state exam for Russian, these are important parts, but they are very cliched, and it is really muscle training more than understanding. So here, as I promised, of course, I need to say that there are different schools where the Russian language is taught as the first language. Of course, there are different teachers who kind of doctor the program or change it a little bit or a lot, make it more logical. Of course, I'm not discussing every school. I just took the standard program. So for example, in the 6th grade, there are a lot of hours dedicated to morphology, the parts of speech. So noun, 10 hours, adjective, 15 hours, numeral, 23 hours, which is a little bit shocking for me personally. Pronoun, 15 hours, and so on. Verb, 36 hours. And then you can see that there is lexicology, a very important topic for middle school students, and it only takes 20 hours. Word formation, a very difficult part of Russian language, only 14 hours. So it is really disproportionate. And if I put myself in the position of a middle school student now, studying according to official governmental Russian language program as the first language, it would be difficult for me to remember what was in the beginning, in the first lesson about numerals after 23 lessons. But that's my perspective, my personal perspective, so to say. In the 7th grade, it's mostly morphology, and you can see the number of hours dedicated to every set of topics, set of parts of speech. I wrote gerund here. It's not really gerund, it's just the closest grammatical thing that I could think of as the analogy for the Russian part of speech. Of course, there is revision every year. In the beginning of the year, there's revision, some text analysis, of course, some talk about functional styles of the language, like a spoken style of others as well. But what we decided to do when we restructured this program, oh no, sorry, one more thing to say. The result of this situation is that students usually, as I can see, have difficulty understanding the place of the language within world languages. I have looked at some of the students' books, and they give the understanding of Russian language as the national language of Russia, but not as one of the Indo-European or Slavic languages, nothing like that. They have difficulty usually pointing out connections between word formation and morphology, for example, or phonetics and some changes in spelling, because this connection is not pointed out. Again, as I said, the language is not perceived by the as a system by the students. It is kind of a stack of random facts, random rules, and then a lot of muscle memory, so to say, when the student does a lot of exercises dedicated to the same rule, and then it kind of becomes automatic for the student. The thing that I personally had to fight the most in students is that they tend to memorize and not understand. So they rely on memory more than on understanding the connections and the facts of the language. So when we restructured the program, our goal was to put language, first language, L1, into contexts, into linguistic contexts, that any language does not exist in vacuum, does not develop without connections to other languages. Of course, every language derives from, there is some sort of historical derivation. And also historical context. And I have noticed that some of my students asked me to tell more about the history of Russian language, because first, it is of course interesting, and second, it puts the language in the context, and the language is not independent from the I don't know, psychology of the people, or how they perceive the world and how they describe the world. So these things seem important for both the teachers as well as the students, the linguistic and the historical context. We also wanted to create a structured understanding in students, and I will show you later on the graphs how we decided to achieve this goal. Structured understanding of the language as a system of elements where every element has its place, is connected somehow to other elements on the same level or on other levels. And that there are some algorithms in the language studying, so to say, like morphological analysis, for example. Yes, I don't think that many people who are not linguists or Russian teachers or language teachers have ever done morphological analysis of a part of speech after they have finished school. But it is an algorithm that is very helpful, and we try to show the students that it is actually helpful, and it actually lets them use the knowledge that they had acquired. Spelling and punctuation, of course, are very important. There is some time dedicated to practice, but the explanation of the rules is founded on logic and not reflex. So usually there are some rules that kind of after practicing them with 100 exercises, a student just automatically writes something, the right thing usually. But after that, the student can forget the rule, right? And because they don't understand the rules, they memorize them, use them, write the test, maybe forget them later. What we do, we try to explain the rules, putting them in context of the language levels. So I will show you later what levels I mean. Also, and it is very, very important for us and for our program, we use the lessons of the first language as the time to teach and practice and develop some skills. For example, text analysis or creating the text, so writing basically. How to follow instructions that are given, how to create instructions, how to find information, how to conduct research, how to report on this research orally and in writing. So there are instructions and rules, not rules, sorry, explanations for each of these main skills. What our program in the first language, for example, in Russian language, looks like. You see 3 years, year 1 in the bottom, and then year 2 in the middle, and then year 3 on the top. And the numbers there are the number of hours we don't have, in our school, we don't have as many hours as in the governmental school. So we use them wisely. Every year begins with some sort of introduction. So the first year begins with a history, with putting the language into context. So I'm talking about Indo-European languages, this language tree, so to say, the connections, the language families, the groups, and how to know that two languages are related or not related. Of course, in a very specific way that is understandable for the first year students. First year is about 5th and 6th grade in the middle school, in Russian middle school. Then we move forward until the end of the year, throughout the whole year, by the levels. So the first level is phonetics, and we talk about the sound system of the language. Every time, as much as I can, I give analogies in other languages. Then we talk about parts of the word, morphemes. Then we talk about word formation, which is very logical after talking about morphemes. Then about lexicology, because we have already talked about word formation. Then there is morphology, so parts of speech. And then there's syntax. In the second year and in the third year, the years start with talking about what linguistics is and how the whole science, the linguistics, describes and researches the language or the languages. That there is morphology, and there is phonology, and there is lexicography, and there is sociolinguistics, neurolinguistics. I just say that there are different ways to talk about or to research language or languages. Then we move along across the same levels in the second year. So there's phonetics, word formation, lexicology, but we talk about them through the prism of the language norm. And then we continue talking about morphology, because there are a lot of parts of speeches in the Russian language, for example, and you can't squeeze them into the first year, and you should. And then there's syntax, so we kind of go a little bit back, revise, and then move forward with syntax. In the fourth year, or in the third year, you see that we talk about lexicology, about the norm, about the variations, the speech errors, and stuff like that. We talk about stylistics, and we make a big report on a scientific, on a linguistic topic. For example, one of those was problematic questions of Russian morphology. And it is possible for the students that perceive the language as a system. The concept that our program follows, I call it layer cake, because you could see in the previous diagram that we always start with language as a system, as a part of word languages. Then we move to phonetics. There's always comparison to other languages or to different stages of historical development of the same language. Then word formation, then lexicology, morphology, and syntax. And every time on every level, we try to remind people about the previous levels, and also always make comparisons with other languages, with other stages of development of the Russian language. We show connections. Students try to put the material in their notebooks, in tables, and in instructions, like how to do some analysis and stuff. Note taking is a very important skill. I will talk about it later. We talk about language history, and it's not a course about the history of Russian language, of course, but we try to introduce this side of learning a language, even your mother tongue, because it is usually very interesting and very useful. And then we explain, students hopefully understand, and then they know. So I want to highlight here that they don't remember, they know, because they understand it. And that's my key point. So the chaos of various rules, hundreds of exercises, not connected, like disconnected items of knowledge become a structure. And they can always see this structure because I always remind them of the structure. The skills that we teach, we try to work as hard as possible, teaching these skills and developing these skills in the students, in middle school students of every year, first, second, and third year. The main skills that we teach are analyzing a text according to instructions. It can be a linguistic analysis. So for the Russian language subject, it can be done in literature. There will be different kind of analysis. In history, different kind of analysis. So different subjects can use the same skill. I mean, the students use the same skill in different subjects. Creating text or writing according to an instruction. And here we teach them to write a 5-paragraph essay, 6-paragraph essay, argumentative, informative essay, and so on, according to a very strict instruction. And we use it not only in the first language subject, but also in history and in literature. And I'm sure that other subjects, like, for example, biology or maybe physics, they also need students to write a full answer, so to say. And there is where the students also use this skill. Note-taking is a very important skill, and first language is the best subject to train this or to develop this skill. We use various formats, from very simple copy from the board, whiteboard, or slide, to kind of difficult, try to keep up and take notes from a video lecture or from an uncontrollable source, like your teacher speaking and you can't control him. Different types of note-taking, also very important, and also interdisciplinary, because students use this skill in every subject. Also, we teach them to use reference material. For example, in my subject, I teach them to use dictionaries, different types of dictionaries. When we have some kind of argument, like some student doesn't agree with my point of view, I say, let's check with the dictionary. By the way, they sometimes win. They learn to find, to use, and also to create this reference material. Source analysis is also very, very important. For example, there are different types of dictionaries, and there are different dictionaries of the same type. One is better, one is worse. They learn to understand which one they should use. In other subjects like history or literature, they also use the same skill, just not with dictionaries. We teach them to report on their research orally, and it is very important to plan. Any research you do in biology and physics and any other subject, you first need to research, then you need to plan, then you need to do the report, and then you need to learn how to get and give feedback. And then the written report, the same thing, starting with research and planning. So I think personally that these skills should be developed in the during the hours of the Russian language or first language in middle school, and used interdisciplinarily, so to say. So the last thing that I will very quickly say or talk about is how it all pertains to blended learning, online and offline. What can be done in both of these situations? So basically, you can use you can do the same thing online and offline. You can give the same material. You don't have to restructure the whole program according to serve this time slots to coincide with this time slots. But for example, when I am online, when we are online, I show a presentation, then we do some practice. When we are offline, the lesson is structured a little bit differently. There is a little bit of theory, then practice, then theory, then practice, and so on. They get handouts and not a presentation, because we try to use something that you can touch during the offline period, and not rely so, I personally try not to rely so much on electronic devices. When you are online, you can use the internet, you can Google, you can go through different internet sources, dictionaries, and other things. Offline, you cannot do it as much. So you have to dedicate your time to some other skills, like note-taking, for example. Yes, so creating, finding, and using reference information, it's usually for online, the practice, but explanation how to do it can be done online. Revision is also usually done online, and independent research is usually done online, and reporting. Skills are basically the same. We just use offline sessions more for discussion. And you can see here in this second column, you see limited and academic discussion, and only limited discussion online, because you need physical presence of your opponents or your group mates, teammates, to feel more comfortable during a discussion. The main thing that differs online and offline periods is how we structure work, because online is mostly for it, in my subject, for example, online is mostly for independent work and learning to give and get peer feedback. Offline is more for group work and project work. But again, I need to highlight here that it is not necessary to restructure the whole program according to this online-offline periods, and it is better, in my perspective, to structure the program as I showed you on the slides, according to the layers of general linguistics. Thank you. If you have any questions, I will be very glad to answer them.
Yes, thank you, Ina. So we do have a question in the chat. And
oh, I can.
Yeah, can you read it? Yes, just
it will take me some time though.
Or I can read it out for you.
Okay, I can read it aloud, okay? So that everybody hears. Would you say that teaching language as a system somehow intersects with teaching programming languages? If only I knew something about that. No, now students start learning to code in middle school. Oh yeah. Do you think it makes sense to overlap teaching how language works and developing this type of skills? Thanks. Okay, so in the beginning of the second and the third year of my program, I talk about different types of linguistics, and I also talk about computational linguistics, of course, because I think it is very interesting. And I talk about the fact that, because they start talking about programming languages first. The students, of course, they learn Python and other things on their own, and they're very interested in that. And I tell them that, yes, well, a language is also a system, and yes, you can create, I don't know, dictionaries or translate, like Google Translate and stuff like that, interpreters, sorry, I don't know the word, using this, using your language skills and using your programming skills. So I think it would be just a dream come true if we want to have time enough to kind of recalibrate maybe the linguistic program into a more linguistic program, with introduction of some of the programming languages. It is a very, very good idea. Just to clarify, this is the second question. When you say give feedback, do you mean students give feedback to one another? If yes, what is the format? Okay, so yes, peer feedback is what I mean here. Of course, the teacher also gives feedback, but the teacher can, he is trained to give feedback professionally. The other students are not trained to do so. So they usually are very shy, or they think, I didn't listen really, so I didn't hear anything, so I have no questions, and I don't have any feedback. I liked what they said, whatever. And we try to teach them that the peer feedback is very important, both to give and to get, to learn to accept it and maybe discuss it. It can start a discussion also. And also this makes you listen better. So, thank you for the questions.
Okay, also you can ask questions out loud. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, there is another question. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for a lot of, thank you for the presentation. Not sure if my question is to the speaker or to all speakers. In my practice as educator and learning facilitator in contemporary art and humanities in general, I develop project-based research approach and do work a lot in blended and hybrid models. As per research practice, I use instruction-based homework that suppose students to do field research. It has to go to a certain site and perform research and data collecting there. Can this be considered blended or hybrid education tool? Also, can we talk of implementing such an approach vis-a-vis minors above 18 years old, so that going anywhere on site for them is problematic in terms of autonomy? I don't think it's a question for me, though.
I think because you have talked about how research as an education tool, maybe you could expand a bit more on that. But we also have speakers here who will be coming on next. So yes, if I could keep this question in mind also, Nika and Matvey, and maybe you could incorporate this in your presentation as well.
I remembered very quickly. I can say what we do. We do a little bit of research, like field research, because there is sociolinguistics, and middle school students are a social group. So I sometimes conduct or teach them to conduct this linguistic research. Like, do you know the meaning of this word? Yes, not sure, no, stuff like that. So it is actually, and I explain to them that this is an experiment, a linguistic experiment. So linguistics is a very interesting science. And also I tell them that linguistics is developing, the language studies is developing, and there are questions that are not solved yet. I talk about these questions, I say which opinions there are, and they try to do some research to create their own. That's what I do. That's how I apply this in my subject.
Thank you so much.